to this webinar. My name is Heather Lindsay, and it is so good to be here with you today on this webinar that I've created especially for mums, and that is 6 Steps to Listening Kids. I am thrilled that you are watching today. We all have amazingly busy and active lives, and I am honoured that you took time out of your schedule to be with me on this training today. Everything I share in this webinar, I use with my kids all the time. I know the techniques work because I use them every day. I used to get really frustrated when my kids didn't listen to me. I'd rack my brain about thinking what I was doing wrong and how I could change it. So after some research, once I knew what I knew, everything was so much easier. Through Blissed Out Mums, I've been able to share everything that I have learnt and I've used with mums around Australia and the world, and it's been an amazing experience. So on this webinar, I'm going to be sharing with you some of the practical things that you can use so that you can talk to your child so they listen and do what you need them to do. This webinar is also an introduction to my Talking to Kids program, which takes you even deeper than our time can today together. So please keep listening for more information about how you can get even more specific with you and your child and get them to listen to you even more. So without further delay, and because we're all busy mums, let's get started. Now, I want to make sure that this webinar is for you, so you're in the right place if you're a mum whose child is not currently listening to her and it's becoming a problem for your family. You don't like having to repeat yourself or yell, but it seems to be the only way to get anyone to listen. You've tried a whole heap of different strategies, but success has really only been short-lived. And you're tired of being frustrated and angry. You're ready to stop the worry cycle of if you're doing a good enough job as a mum. You want to have that cohesive family environment where everyone listens, communicates well, and gets the daily tasks of life done so that you can all really spend that quality family time together. So if this sounds like you, then I'm totally excited for you and of course what you're going to learn with our time together today. Now, because I know that you may actually be hearing from me for the first time, I want to give you a little bit of my personal story. So my name is Heather and I'm a parenting coach, a registered Circle of Security facilitator, a master NLP practitioner and a registered nurse. My most important role, however, is being a single mum to my 3 beautiful children. And you can see my youngest, my son, right here in this photo. I created the parenting support service Blissed Out Mums in 2014 after recovering and thriving after having severe postnatal depression with my youngest daughter, my middle child. I ended up finding that the traditional method of psychotherapy wasn't working anymore, and I wanted and needed something more practical. Here's where life coaching entered my world. At the time, I'd been a single mum for about 6 months. I had my 2 girls, and after I went through coaching and I moved through my postnatal depression and, onto the other side, I decided to do my own training, as you do as a single mum with 2 kids. But it was the best thing I ever did. As I did my training and I tailored it to the struggles that we as mums face and then, of course, took action, boy, did my experience as a mum change. Suddenly, I was happy again. I knew the type of person I wanted to be. I knew the type of mum I wanted to be. I stopped yelling. The house was organised. The shopping was done. We were eating healthier food. I was exercising, losing weight, sleeping well, full of energy and looking good. I was connecting with my kids again. I loved being with them, even in those hard moments. I was being present, and I didn't feel guilty when I took time out to look after myself. So, really, basically, I did a complete 180. Everyone started to comment on the changes that they could see, even friends who hadn't known me that long. I was so proud of everything that I had achieved, and I had a light bulb moment one morning in the shower, as you do, and I knew that there were other mums out there who weren't happy. And through what I had learnt and what I had gone through, I knew how to provide practical strategies that work that could change their lives and the lives of their children. So I knew in that moment, with shampoo in my hair, that that's what I was going to do with the rest of my life. And then Blissed Out Mums was born. And over the 6 years since then, I've been able to share my knowledge and experience with thousands of mums. It's been an amazing journey, and I have loved every single minute of it. One of my passions is helping mums to be calmer with their kids. And I have found that there is one common thing that frustrates mums the most. And they want and they need their children to listen to them. But it's not happening. You know, we all know the familiar story. You start calmly asking the kids to do something and, probably say it a couple more times, nice and calmly, but still, no one seems to be listening and nothing seems to be getting done. Then it escalates and you end up losing it. You scream, yell, rant, rave, smack. I've heard it all. And then afterwards, you feel so guilty. If only your child had listened and done what you needed them to do, you wouldn't have had to yell. Simple. So I've realized that by being able to give parents strategies so that they can talk with their kids, so their kids listen the first time and do what they need them to do, it's one part of the puzzle towards creating a happy and calm household. So after years of research and study, I've put this webinar and the Talking to Kids program together to help you do just this. Now, the strategies that I'm going to teach you today have done a tremendous service for me and my family. And I want you to reap the same rewards of being able to get your children to listen and cooperate so that you have a calm and peaceful household. So, grab a pen, open your mind and heart to a new way of thinking about talking with your kids. Let's talk about language. Language is the main parenting tool that you use with your kids. Every time that you open your mouth on a day-to-day basis, you are influencing your child. You're helping them grow and develop. When we speak, we are creating a picture in our child's mind and a feeling in their body. Now, children will always move towards the picture that is in their head. It's just part of their development. So, the ultimate key of this whole webinar is to create a positive picture in our child's mind of what we want them to do, not what we don't want them to do. If you switched off here, and I knew that if you followed that principle, you'd see changes in how your child's listen. But if you want a bit more information, let's stick around. When we talk to our kids, it's our job to make sure that our message is being heard and understood before we expect it to be acted upon. So today I will be sharing with you 6 techniques that you can use to help make sure that this actually happens. Now, you may find that some of the phrases feel a bit clunky at first, but as it becomes easier and more second nature, you will experience the impact that they have on your child listening to you. So please persevere with it. Persevere with the feeling of being a little bit uncomfortable, because as the saying goes, practice makes perfect. When we talk to our kids and have them do what we need them to do, we're talking in a kind, loving and respectful way, and then we don't have to yell. And when we don't have to yell, it gets rid of the pesky mummy guilt. And as an added bonus, our kids learn how to talk this way, and these are lifelong skills that will benefit as they go through childhood, teenage years and into their adult years. Learning to speak to our kids in a different way does take practice. And as our kids provide us with plenty of opportunity, I know that you can get these language tools working for you. So let's get started. There are 6 language tools that can be used to create a positive, empowered and cooperative future with our kids. And they are avoiding don't, let's connect, negative to positive, you and I together, reframe it, and questions, questions, questions. Let's get started with language tool number 1, avoiding don't. How often do you say don't to your child? I'm sure up to hundreds of times per day. Kids are motivated by what picture is in their head. Child see, child do. When we say don't, we're actually creating a picture in their heads of what we don't want them to do. It's not then surprising that they do exactly what we don't want them to do. So let me explain this. If I say to you, don't think of a green tree, in order to make sense of the phrase, of the words that I've said, your mind has to think of a green tree. But you're sitting there going, oh, Heather, I'm thinking of the green tree, but you don't want me to think of the green tree. So what do I think of? As the person speaking, I haven't directed you or led you to where I actually want you to be. So I haven't told you what I actually want you to think of. I might be wanting you to actually think of a yellow tree, but I haven't told you to. So how would you know what I want you to think of? The same thing happens with our kids. If we say don't, we're just drawing attention to what we don't want them to do, rather than tell them what we do want them to do. We have to be clear. In parenting, of course, there are times when we have to say don't for safety reasons. If we absolutely have to say don't, we must make sure that we give our child an alternative after creating the image of what we don't want them to do. So we want to be leading them to what we do want them to do. Don't run on the road, play on the grass, please. Don't stand too close to the oven, stand over here, please. Don't hit your sister, use gentle touching, please. To help our child hear the message that we are trying to have them understand, we must be clear and say what we want them to do. Being clear decreases the chance of misunderstanding and that your child will actually do what you need them to do, and you in turn won't start to get cranky. Language tool number 2. Let's connect. Connecting with our child, agreeing with them and having them agree with us is a must in helping to get them to listen to us. Everyone, whether they are a child, a teenager, or an adult, is happy when they are being agreed with. You ever been around someone who just seems to disagree or contradict what you're saying every single time? Time and time and time again? After a while, you either stop arguing back with them or you just don't want to spend any time with them. It gets really uncomfortable and upsetting. Being agreed with equals love at a higher level. And, from a very basic survival standpoint, being agreed with means that the tribe or the family accepts me, which means that they love me, and which means that they won't throw me out and then I'll have no food to eat and die. It's very simplistic, but it's a great way to think about the importance of agreeing and keeping everyone together. Now, it is important to note that agreeing with our child is about respect, not that we do what they want us to do. It's about acknowledging where they are, their emotion and their viewpoint, but still being the bigger and wiser parent who is leading them along the path of growing up. Now, there are 4 connecting phrases. They are, I agree, I respect, I appreciate, and I hear. Agreeing with your child does not mean automatically doing what they want. It's about hearing what your child says and communicating it to them, that they have been heard. It's really important to respect children. If we want them to respect us, we have to respect them. It's all about acknowledgement. A child can go to sleep, go through their days thinking, my mum and dad agree and respect me, therefore they love me. It's really important for their emotional and mental health. So, how does this actually work with our kids? I agree it doesn't feel good to go to bed when we're still awake, and tomorrow when you wake up, you'll feel rested and we can go to the park. I hear that you want the lollipop now, and we're about to have some yummy lunch, so you can have it after. I appreciate that you want to go to the park, and if you put your shoes on, we can go right now. Can you hear the difference in these sentences and how they're making you feel? It's amazing how often we end up just constantly telling our kids what to do without acknowledging where they're coming from. And so when we use this language, it can feel really awkward. But remember, it's not about doing what our child wants. It's about just acknowledging them and still being bigger and wiser and leading them to where we want them to be. Language tool number 3, negative to positive. The words we speak to our kids can unintentionally come across as very negative. In our rush to get things done, to teach and run our day-to-day lives, we can find ourselves ordering our kids to do things rather than empowering them to take action without being told what to do. We've all done it. I've done it. Running out of the house in the morning, particularly Wednesday mornings during term, which is my very busy morning, I can slip into old habits, snapping and barking orders at the kids just in order to get out of the door at time. However, if I do fall into those bad habits, it always makes me feel awful and really uncomfortable in the moment and after. I always have to remind myself to stop and slow down and change the way I speak to my kids so that I empower them to do what I need them to do without having to ask them 100 times. So, what does negative to positive mean? So, negative or necessity language is what I call have to language, and positive language is what I call possibility language. Have to language is ordering, it's forceful, basically being told what to do, rather than help encourage our children to think for themselves and know what they should be doing because of the values and beliefs that we install in them. Examples of negative or have to language include you have to, obviously, you must be, what you need is, you should try, it's impossible to, it's necessary to, or you mustn't get. As with all of the language techniques in this webinar, I really want you to think about how you feel when this language is used with you. No one, adults or children, like being told what to do and what they have to do. We all like being fostered to think for ourselves and to be uplifted. It makes us feel good about ourselves, and it's the same for our kids. Now, you may be thinking that you have to use this type of language in order to get the kids to do things. Remember, there is more than one way to get to the same result. And when we change the way we're speaking to our kids, we're changing the route, not the destination. So let's look at the language of possibility, the alternative to have to language. The language of possibility empowers our children. It helps them to take action, decreases their resistance to us, and is simply kind and respectful. It includes the words may, might, can, could, and the phrases it's important, it's often useful, it's great to, and you may find. Can you hear the differences between these words and phrases versus the have to language? Using these phrases is a great way to stop feeling as if you're constantly nagging or speaking negatively to your child. And when we stop nagging, we decrease resistance. It also increases the probability that what we need to get done gets done. And our kids feel more positive because they're not being nagged. So let's use an example of teaching our kids to be gentle and to not hit others. If we say you must not hit your brother, it's quite forceful and it doesn't actually help your child learn. Compare that to, it's important to be gentle with your brother. That phrase actually opens the lines of communication to be able to teach about gentleness, respect, and empathy compared to just being a closed order. Now, does this take more time? Yes, it can, especially in the beginning when we're changing the way we talk. But it is worth it. Explaining ourselves and making sure that the message we speak is heard and understood once or even a few times, because our kids often require reinforcement to learn, and that's totally normal. Overall, it takes a lot less time in the long run compared to yelling orders when we're being rushed. Now, if you're sitting there feeling a bit overwhelmed with all of these techniques, and we're only halfway through, I suggest you remind yourself just to start with one or two and build from there as you see the positive progress that you're making with your kids listening. Language tool number 4, you and I together. Now, simply, this is win-win conflict resolution negotiation techniques. It works at work, in business, with our partners or husbands, and even with our kids. Have you ever had someone come to you and say, what you need to do is, or you mustn't, all that have to language, or you are doing that wrong? Being a mum, I'm sure you actually have. And one area that comes to mind is unwanted parenting advice. We've all received it. Now, how do you feel when you get told you? Probably quite negative. You is very forceful. It's not the best language to use with children, especially if we want to increase cooperation and foster a healthy parent-child relationship. We want and need children to feel useful and significant, as this will help you gain cooperation. By staying I-focused and being honest with how you're feeling, you can get your point across much more effectively. And the other person, our child, hears what we need them to do rather than just you telling them what to do. For example, I'm feeling really tired now and I'd love you to sit quietly and read a book. Or, I find that if I don't brush my teeth and they go all furry, I have smelly breath. Or, I find that eating all my vegetables first, before they go cold, makes them taste better. In each of these examples, you can see how your message gets across with no forceful language. It helps connect us with our child, and therefore we work together to solve a problem. It also opens up them hearing what we have experienced in the past and us hearing what they're experiencing now. Experience and listening goes both ways. If we listen to them and listen to their experiences, they're more likely to listen to us. So give it a go and see how it feels. Language tool number 5, reframe it. This is a huge one in parenting, and it's because our children have lots of assumptions. They can't read behind the lines of what we're saying or doing. Their brain just isn't as fully developed as ours, and they have a limited understanding of the complex world that we all live in. Their first assumption is A equals B, but we know as adults that A does not always immediately equal B. When we change our child's thinking, we're moving them from assumption to thinking critically about a situation. Now, this is a skill that will benefit them their whole lives, and especially when we ingrain it in their thinking patterns and the way they live their life when they're young. They therefore won't struggle with their ability to reframe things when they're adults. Now, It doesn't always mean flipping negative to positives, as I've got here in this graphic. It's just about looking at things in a different light and what a possibility or a different alternative could be to the current situation. Assumption thinking is A equals B. Mum yelled at me equals she doesn't like me. I was told I was bad today equals Mum and Dad doesn't love me. Or Mum sent me to my room equals Mum doesn't want me anymore. Now, in the parent in this situation, we know that A does not equal B in any of these situations. But for our child, they can't understand it. So we have to reframe it and give it a different meaning and often a more correct meaning. Now, sometimes reframing requires a little bit of parenting detective work. Simply coming out and flipping it into the positive will not work. So when you're connected with your child and you can look at the situation objectively, you therefore can lead your child into a new way of thinking. So let's reframe the above sentences so that A equals Z instead. Mum's sorry that she yelled at you today, and it's because I'm so tired. You're not a bad boy, and hitting behaviour is not acceptable. Mum is sorry that I sent you to your room. Come here and let's be together. So can you see the difference? Reframing language often happens after the fact, after our child has made an assumption or potentially made an assumption about what's happened. It's a wonderful opportunity also for us to apologise for anything that we've done or said that we didn't wish to do. You know, it's really great role modelling behaviour. Encouraging different thinking patterns, that is, thinking outside the box, creates and grows more connections in the brain. And we know that more connections in the brain our children have, the better their growth and development. The more we talk to our children with positive language, teaching them how to reframe and use all of the techniques in this webinar in their lives now, the better skills they'll have for their whole lives. I reframe a lot in my own life, and I love this quote by Dr. Seuss. Don't cry because it's over, smile because it's happened. Simple, powerful, and straight to the point. Language tool number 6, and the final one for this webinar. Questions, questions, questions. Just like saying don't to your child, how many times have you said why to your child? Why did you leave your toys on the floor where I tripped over them? Why is the towel still on the floor? Why can't you just put your shoes on so we can get out of the door on time? Questions, questions. They're not always useful unless we're actually exploring a topic for the goal of learning. When we ask someone why they've done something or why they're doing something, it often backs them into a corner of justification. It doesn't actually lead to the solution. Everyone gets defensive and it usually ends up in another argument or one party muttering about the other underneath their breath. So what else should we say other than why? What's the purpose of? This finds the intention or the root cause of the behaviour. For example, what was the purpose of leaving your toys on the floor? What specifically explores potential outcomes and consequences or intended actions? What specifically will happen if the wet towel stays on the floor? How do you know? Finds the reason for an action or belief. How do you know when you're ready for school? What specifically do you need to do next? The last one is wonderful because, of course, it uses 2 questions to explore the situation. That's why questions are my favourite language tool. Everything is linking together to challenge thinking patterns. And that is it. We are at the end of this webinar, and through the 6 language tools you can use with your kids while you're talking to them to get them to listen to you the first time. I hope that you've gained some valuable insight and information into helping your child listen to you the first time. Now, this webinar is an introduction to some of the language tools you can learn in my Talking to Kids online program. The Talking to Kids program goes much deeper than this session ever could, and you can join by visiting my website blessedoutmums.com.au/talking-to-kids. It looks into the communication cycle and how a child's developmental stage impacts how they listen to us. You know, talking to a toddler is very different to a preteen. It helps you with ways to connect with your child so that they want to listen to you and work with you, not just have to listen to you because you're their mum. You'll learn how to talk to them so that they want to talk to you, meaning that when they get into tricky situations when they're older, coming to you for help is a no-brainer. The Talking to Kids program will help you discover your child's communication style so that you can personalize the way that you speak to your child to motivate them to do what you need them to do. The 6 language tools in this webinar are general, but they work with all communication styles. However, we can get even more specific by learning their communication style and ours, and it makes such a difference once you know. There are words that encourage our child to do what we need them to do, magical sentences, as I like to call them, and I want to teach them all to you. The program is all about learning the skills that will help us with our kids throughout the entire parenting journey, making life easier for ourselves and supporting our child's development at the same time. Who doesn't want that? It runs over 3 modules, all accessible through an online membership site with videos and downloads. And of course, you'll have lifetime access. Kids grow and develop and their listening needs change. Lifetime access to this material is essential. It's practical. It works. There is a whole lesson on the communication model and how it impacts how our kids hear and don't hear what they say. Going back to basics can help us get some wonderful results. When we develop a deeper connection with our child, it helps them listen and enhances the relationship so that they actually want to listen to us. I'll give you a practical way of putting it all together and creating a plan that works for your family so that this program is not just something that you've registered for but not gotten results from. You don't want that, and neither do I. There are real life case studies so that you can see how other mums just like you have put the program into practice and helped their child and themselves. You are not alone in wanting to help your child listen to you. It's a common frustration among mums. It's not because you've failed or that we're doing something wrong as a mum. It's based in our child's development, their personal communication style, and the relationship we have with them. The Talking to Kids program addresses all of this and helps you get your child to listen to you the first time. All you have to do is pop over to blessedoutmums.com.au/talking-to-kids and join today. The cost of the course is $124 and you can pay securely with PayPal through my website. With lifetime access, it will be there alongside you throughout your parenting journey. Remember that you can always get in contact with me with any questions now and through the time in the program. Simply contact me through my website or come and find me on Facebook and I'll get back to you ASAP. It has been great having you here listening to this recording, and I look forward to having you in the Talking to Kids program. Communication is simply a skill that any mum can conquer, and her child can listen to her the first time she speaks. Thank you, and I shall sign off and say farewell for now. Bye.